We're at the top of 7a, the Mishnah.
Yeah, that's where we went to.
Okay, and we are continuing to discuss the period for which a person is a Nazir, depending on how he adopts his vow. So Amar, Hareini Nazir Achas Gedola. I'm one big Nazir, or implying that it's the Mishnah will take this to imply that it's a longer term than the usual is what he's trying to do. Hareini Nazir Achas Ketana, or I'm one little Nazir, right? Afilu Mikan V'ad Sofa Olam, or even if he says I'm a Nazir from here until Sofa Olam, the end of the world, and Olam, it doesn't mean time. Here it clearly refers to time, so like forever. I'm a forever Nazir. Nazir Shloshim Yom, these have no effect. It's still the standard term of a Nazir, which is 30 days. Gemara says, why? Let me come to Olam Kamar. Picking up on the last piece, the Gemara says, he says, like from now till the end of the world, right? Till the end of time. Hachi Kamar, so Gemara says, this is how we interpret his words. Richali Hada Milsa Kimikan V'ad Sof Olam. It's going to seem, I'm going to be a regular Nazir, but it's going to feel like a forever Nazir. That's how difficult it's going to be for me, but we do not interpret his words as meaning I'm from now till the end of time. Okay, it's not, but we have a Mishnah about this. Hareini Nazir Mikan Ad Makom Plani. What if somebody says, I'm a Nazir from here until Philadelphia? Okay, what does that mean? Does that mean as long as it takes to get to Philadelphia, to walk to Philadelphia? So Amdim Kama Yamim Mikan Biad Makom Plani. Yeah, we see how many days. Let's not take Philadelphia because it's only probably a few days, less than 30 days walk. I'm guessing. Let's see, 90 miles. Yeah, let's say from here to Miami. Okay, so that's going to take you more than 30 days to walk to Miami. So do we say, I say it'll take you 60 days. So do we say that he means the number of days it will take me to walk to Miami, which is 60 days? Or a person says Pachos Mishloshim Yom. Oh, so no. So if he says that Pachos Mishloshim Yom, if it's Philadelphia, it's less than a 30-day trip, then Nazir Shloshim Yom. Then we just say it's a 30-day thing because that is the minimum for a term for a Nazir. But if it's Miami and it's a lot longer than the 30-day trip, Nazir Kamin Yamim. So how many days does it take to walk to Miami? That's how many days you're a Nazir for. The Ema Hachanami. So why don't we say the same thing there? Like, why don't we say that it means I'm a Nazir for 30 days, but it's going to feel like as many days as it takes to walk to Miami, right? Why is this different than the case where a person says Mikan V'ad Sofa Olam, from here till forever? Why don't Hachanami say here, Arichali Hamilsa, Akim Mikan V'ad Makom Plani? Why don't say it as it'll feel like that many days? Rav answers Shehechzik Baderach. The Mishnah dealing with Miami and Philadelphia, that's where the person was already on that route. Okay, he set out to walk to Miami, and he says, "I'm going to be a Nazir until I get to Miami." So then we interpreted it as saying, "Yeah, that's what he actually means. How many days he means, because he's actually on that journey." But if it's an abstract statement from now till the end of the world, till the end of time, then we don't interpret it that way. We interpret it as it's going to feel like until the end of time. But really it's just 30 days. Why it says Veleve called Parso Parsa. Why don't we say it's not the time, but maybe it's like the number of miles to Miami, right? So it's 1,500 miles to Miami. So maybe I mean 1,500, I'm going to be a Nazir for 1,500 days. Right? Maybe he's not talking about the time it takes to get there. Maybe he's talking about the distance and the discrete units of distance.
If you use units of distance and have many thousands of days, I think you get into Zeno's paradox.
Exactly what I was thinking, right?
Yeah.
What are the units? Well, that's essentially kind of what the Gemara is going to say. Eventually, Amar Rav Papa says, Yashra L'Lamani Parseh. Maybe mileage. Maybe it's we switched over to kilometers, right? Or maybe no, that's the wrong way to look at it. But maybe it's a place where they don't measure the distance, where the distance is not measured.
Well, another thing is it if you say it from here until Miami? Now Miami's not a big deal, but let's say you're in Israel in the times of the Amoraim,
Yeah.
and you want to make it from here to Rome or from here to Bavel, or a particular city in Bavel.
Right.
So the time that it would normally take was often much less than the time that it actually took, because to get to Rome could often involve really with bad weather and shipping problems and stuff like that. And to get to Babel or back or the other way around, you had to cross the international boundary, and they were always at war with each other.
Uh-huh.
It was very risky. So is it the nominal time or the actual time that people take?
Okay, great question. If it's time. Um, well,
There are
I
narratives in
mean,
Torah about how difficult it was to travel from Babel to Eretz Israel,
well,
which should have
I
been a
would
short trip.
guess, I mean, it sounds like we're saying, well, this is known to be, a 21-day or a 50-day journey, right? Sure, it might take you less or more, right? But
Oh,
when you set out on the journey, you're expecting it to be a 50-day journey. This is just conjecture here, and why doesn't
yeah,
discuss this, but it sounds like it's kind of, there's an accepted, standard for how long it takes. Now, as you say, it could take longer. Or maybe that's built into the average. Really, if you were just had no obstacles, it would take you 40 days, but really the average is 50 days because lots of times you have these delays, right? So,
yeah.
but I'm just conjecturing here. Okay. Let's see. All right. So so Rav Papa has said the reason we don't do it by mileage, we do it by time. We assume he's referring to time rather than mileage, is that maybe the mileage isn't really known or calculated or whatever. Maybe there are multiple ways to get there. Some are longer than others, right? Like, as you say, maybe there's the easier way that goes more roundabout, or the direct way, which is more hazardous. So maybe there's no fixed number of miles. So, okay, so that's why we go with that. His meaning was the number of days. Our Papa says, Yasher Lomani Parsa. Oh, yeah, let me just say that. Veleve call Avna Viavna. Okay, why don't you go by the number of why don't you say it's a separate term of Nazirus for each night or for each day that you're on the road. Milotnan, because we have a similar Mishnah. Harini Nazir Kafar Haaretz. Person says, I'm a Nazir like the dust of the earth, right? Or a Kisar Roshi, or like the hair of my head. Ukachalayomer, the sand by the sea. Areza Nazir Olam Umagalech Echad L'Shloshim Yom. So that we interpret as, I want to be a Nazir for as many times as there are hairs in my head, right? So if there are 500,000 hairs in your head, that's 500,000 terms of 30-day Nazirus, right? So why don't we say the same thing in our case? You're on mute, Charlie. You're on mute.
Some of us would have less Nazir than others.
Okay, let's go with the sand of the sea then. So if in that case we say each unit represents a 30-day term of Nazirus. So why don't we say that here on the trip, that each day that you're traveling represents a 30-day period of so Gemara says Kalmilsa the East Bay Kitsusa Lokatane. Anything that is has a determined number. Now, sure, you do have a specific number of hairs on your head, but nobody's going to count them. There is a specific number of sand by the sea, although that's debatable actually, because there's always new sand, new particles being created. But at any given time, it's a fixed number, but nobody's ever going to count it, right? Whereas the number of days of your trip, yeah, that you're going to count, right? So that's the difference between those. So when you use a number that is very that may be determinate, but is very large, nobody's ever going to count them. So then we understand that to mean an infinite number of in terms of Nazirus. But when there's a more reasonable number, like the days of your trip, then we don't do it that way. Then we understand it as meaning that's the number of days I want to be a Nazir for, not the number of individual Nazir terms. Latanya, and we have a support for that in the Brisa. Person says, I'm going to be a Nazir all the days of my life, or Harein Nazir Olam, or I'm a Nazir Olam, the permanent Nazir, Nazir Olam. So, okay, that is understood to mean you want to be a Nazir for the rest of your life. right? One term that is the Nazir Olam that has its own specific rules about when you can, if there are certain rules about when you can cut your hair and so on. Afilu mea shana, but if a person says 100 years, afilu elef shanim, or 1,000 years, which is longer than your lifetime, ein ze Nazir Olam, that's not a permanent Nazir. Elan Nazir le'olam, but that is a Nazir that keeps renewing, right? That you say, if I'm going to be a Nazir for 1,000 years, that means that there's a since there's a determinate number there of 100 or 1,000, then we understand you to mean that each of the, like, it's 1,000 terms of Nazir. Okay. Rabba answers differently. Why does when you refer to the length of your trip, why does that mean the number of days you're a 50-day Nazir rather than 50 terms of Nazirs, as opposed to the hair or the sand on the sea? Shani Saro, so he says the difference is not that it's a number that it cannot readily be determined, but he says, since the hairs are like each hair is an individual unit. Okay, so as opposed to time, which is we artificially divide time, but there's no reason to do so. Like, time is just a dimension, right? It's a thing that just stretches on and on. We split time up for convenience into individual hours, minutes, etc. But that's just a convention. Whereas when it comes to physical objects like sand of the sea, those are actual grains of sand. Each one is a distinct unit. So that's why we treat them differently from the time of a journey. So my answer is Gabi Yominame, but wait, with days, you could also say Haksiv by Erev Yom Echad. So the Torah actually delineates, like, sure, time is but the Torah divides it into days. When in the creation story we say that it was evening, was morning. So we see that we should, or we are able to split time into distinct units, the same that we can split physical objects into distinct units. So the answer is Hasam Lav Demi Paskem Hadalehu. That's so. Gemara says no. When the Torah says Avayi Erev Voker, there was evening and morning, it's not that they're really separate from each other. Uliolam Yamama Velili Chad Yomahu. What it's saying is that when you define a day by convention, it means a day and a night. But that doesn't mean that day is separate from night. That the time of the day is separate from the time of the night. No, it's one long flowing thing. But by convention, when we separate them as day and night are one unit of one calendar day. Okay, so now Rava says, why are you asking all these questions? Shani Hasam, the case of our Mishnah, Dahakatani Hareini Nazir Achas. When the Mishnah is referring, you can just say the Mishnah is referring to when a person says, I'm taking on one term of Nazirus, as long as the days of my journey. Okay, so if you understand it that way, or maybe if the Mishnah is reread that way, then you don't even have to deal with all these questions comparing it to these other cases. The person states specifically, I'm taking on one term of Nazirus for X days, or for the days of my journey, according to the days of my journey, then that makes it a different case than these other cases in which we're trying to determine what he means. Okay. Next mission. Hareini Nazir v'yomech. Person says, I'm a Nazir and a day. Okay, so what does he mean? Does he mean 31 days? Or does he mean to say, I'm going to do a regular term of Nazirs of 30 days and then, another term of 1 day? Of course, you can't do a term of 1 day, so we'll see what the Mishnah and the Gemara do with that. Hareini Nazir v'sha'achas, or if you say, I'm a Nazir and an hour. Hareini Nazir achas u'mechzor, I'm a Nazir 1.5 times, right? Harei zeh Nazir shtayim. So what we say is, he's actually taking on 2 full periods of Nazirus. The day or the hour or the half that he refers to after saying the standard Nazir period, that is again, because as I mentioned, there is no such thing as a Nazir for less than 30 days. So if you're taking on additional Nazirus beyond your first term, it has to be at least another term. So you end up with 2 terms. So Lamalei Mishnah Kolhane, why Gemara says, why do you have to refer to all these different cases? An extra day, an extra hour, an extra half. Tzricha, we need it. The Tana Hareini Nazir Yom Echad, if it only told us about the extra day, person says I'm a Nazir plus a day. So you could say, all right, so there's no such thing as a Nazir for one day. Therefore, you do the one day represents a full new term. Hareini Nazir v'shachas, but the person says I'm a Nazir plus an hour. Limnei shloshim v'echad yom. Maybe it should only be a 31-day period. So the Mishnah tells us no, that if he says a Nazir and an hour, it means another fraction of Nazirus, but we have to take that as a full yeah, it's a little unclear, like what's the difference between the day and the hour. The Rush, according to the notes in the art scroll here, explains that since hours are not a unit used at all in counting Nazirus, I might think that you're tacking that on to your original Nazirus, right? Days are used in measuring Nazirus, right? The standard period difference, why you would treat them differently. But on shachas now, so what if the Mishnah had only told us the case of the person says a Nazir plus an hour? Because maybe he's like not being he's not being exact, right? So maybe the reason, maybe the reason that the Mishnah if the Mishnah had only specified the case of the Nazir plus an hour, maybe he's just not being exact. Like he's saying, I'm a Nazir for a full term and a Nazir for an hour. Okay, but maybe it's not the case where a person specifies days, right? He could mean 31 days, which is valid. So the Mishnah says no. The Mishnah says both of these cases, it's 2 separate. He takes on 2 separate terms. But also the case where say 1.5, I want to be a Nazir plus a half, where he specifying, half of 30 days is 15 days. So that's a specific thing. Maybe that he means 45 days, 1 term of Nazirs for 45 days. That would be valid. So the Mishnah therefore tells us, Kamash Malan Kulu Nazir Shnaim. All of these cases, whether you say a Nazir in a day, a Nazir in an hour, a Nazir in a half, these all are interpreted as I'm a full Nazir for 30 days, and I'm taking on another term, which I specified too little, but the minimum of my second term is 30 days, so I'm stuck with that. Okay, next Mishnah. Harein Nazir Shloshim Yom Mishachas. Person says, I'm a Nazir for 30 days and 1 hour. So here he's not using in the previous Mishnah, he said, I'm a Nazir without specifying the number of days, and that's understood to be 30 days plus an hour. Here he's saying, I'm a Nazir for 30 days and an hour. So then Nazir Shloshim B'Yachad Yom. So now this time we interpret it as 31 days. Okay, but he's not referring to 2 separate terms. He's saying I'm a Nazir for this number of days, 30 days and an hour. Now there is no partial day with Nazirus, so we interpret that as 30 days and the next day, or 31 days. Shein Nazirus B'Shos, because there's no such thing as a Nazir for part of a day. For like you never measure Nazirus by hours, only by days. Okay. So Amar Rav says, so So the Mishnah implies that there is such a thing, and this we've taken for granted, right? That there's such a thing as being able to specify the number of days of your Nazirus. It doesn't have to be 30 days. 30 days is a minimum, but you could specify 31 days or 39 days, or as we saw before, 30 to 45 days. So Rav says, all right, well, let's be specific. If the person says, I'm a Nazir for 31 days, that works for 31 days. But if he says, Shloshim Yom V'Yom Echad, but if he says, I'm going to be a Nazir for 30 days and 1 day, then that's interpreted as 2 periods in the Nazirus. The first one is the 30 days, and the second one, referred to by the 1 day, is then subject to the minimum of another 30 days. Okay, Rav Sarulak Rabbi Akiva, Darsh Lishni Sarah. And Rav bases this on the view of Rabbi Akiva. Then we have Mishnah, Los Habor, Velos Hadus, Afal Pisha Kosovo, Kavaruma. So shifting to property transactions, if a person sells a house and specifies without the pit or the cistern, so Alpha Pisha Kosovo, even though the contract says I'm selling you the house, all the way to the ground, or all the way, to the core of the earth, and all the way to the sky, right? So even though he specifies that in the contract, but if he didn't specify the cistern is a separate thing. But sarich likach lo derech, and if the owner did not sell the cistern, then now how does he access the cistern? He's sold the property around it, so he has to buy a right of way for himself. Wants to access the cistern, maybe his, but he has to buy. He has to get the buyer, the current owner, to agree to a right of way. The other rabbis say no, he does not do. That if he says except for the, I'm telling you everything except for the cistern, so then that implies that he retains for himself the right to access the cistern. So by specifying it separately, it's like this extra statement actually has meaning. So it's the same. We're applying the same logic, or we're saying that Rabbi Akiva would apply the same logic to the superfluous statement about the extra day, and that's why he sees it as that's why Rav, basing himself on Rabbi Akiva, according to Gemara, with extra term 30 days and another day, that we interpret that we actually interpret that differently than if he had only said 31 days. Okay.
A question. I don't know whether either of you know the answer to this, but I don't know what the law is in the United States. If I sell land but keep a part of it that doesn't have public road access, are you required to allow me access? Or in other words, does secular law follow the rabbis or Rabbi Akiva? I don't know the answer. A lawyer might know.
Yeah, it probably, I suppose, could be different in different localities too. Right?
I remember my grandmother owned some land in South Carolina a couple generations ago. It had no road access. It was surrounded by land owned by her cousins or siblings even, but actually her in-laws. So she wasn't going to try to cause nasty problems within the family. But I wonder whether she had a right under secular law to access it.
Well, this also comes up when it comes to beach access, right? Because beach access is free and clear. But what if you own the property along the beach? You have to provide a right of way to get.
Yeah, in 48 states, the wet beach is publicly owned.
Right, only 48. Yeah, which are there?
Maine and Massachusetts are exceptions.
Oh, I didn't know that. I thought it was
dating from colonial times.
Learn something new every day.
Yeah, but everywhere else, yeah, you're right. And that's caused some nasty lawsuits in some
Mhm.
places.
Yes. Indeed. All right, we'll stop here for today. We'll pick up tomorrow on the next stuff. Have a good day, everybody.
Have a good day. Thank
Joshua
you.
Koch, thank you. Good to see you back.